topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Got such a big show planned today. Everybody loves our community association show, and they're all brought to you by K. Bender Rimbaum. They're one of the top HOA Condo Association law firms in the state of Florida. And we are so lucky to have attorney Alan Swartzide. Alan, it's so good to see you again.
Likewise, Steve.
Show.
I'm glad to be back. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we're here in rainy Palm Beach right now. It is pouring here. And I don't know if you've looked at the news, but there's some kind of a tropical storm on the East Coast just sitting there. So it's almost hurricane season again.
Well, you know what, Steve? I lived in South Florida from the time I was about 12 until 2018. And there is a reason that I ended up in Orlando. It wasn't only work related, I promise. But here I am.
Well, I'm glad you're here today with us for the next 50 minutes. If you have a question for Alan, you can call us at 561-623-9429. Or if you're watching us on TV, we have a chat line that you can also ask questions. Plus, for the last month, we've been taking your questions via email, and we've got so many questions for Alan today. Before we get started, Alan, tell everybody about K. Bender Rimbaum.
Sure. Well, we're like you mentioned, we are a law firm that almost exclusively represents community associations. So like you said, condos, HOAs, co-ops, a couple mobile home parks here and there. And, you kind of threw me for a loop when you mentioned Orlando, because I'm so used to everyone thinking that I'm in South Florida.
Right.
I am the managing partner of the Orlando office of our firm. We have offices in Palm Beach Gardens, and our main office is in Pompano Beach. We also have offices by appointment in Tampa and Miami. So we are really practicing statewide. Firm's been around since the 90s. We're already getting calls. Thanks. So in reality, it's 20 attorneys, 8 of whom are board certified experts in this area of law, one of whom is a construction expert as well, according to the Florida Bar. And in reality, this is what we do. It's what we've done for several decades now. And we're happy to help our clients out and try and keep the industry as clean and as good as it can be. My clientele are primarily in Central Florida, but all of us, frankly, just help each other out whenever it's needed. So I do practice statewide, and so does the firm.
You know what? One of the things I love about your firm, Alan, is you all give so much of your time to the educational side. I mean, just like the show here, but you also offer free classes. And now, are you doing the same thing? And we're here in Orlando today. So will you be doing the same thing with the classes in Orlando?
I will. So most of our classes are held via Zoom, so it makes it accessible. I mean, I actually ended up substituting in for one this morning that had about 200 people on. Did one 2 days ago that had about 200 people. But for Orlando in particular, I do offer an in-house, in my office, a board certification course every month. I kind of swapped between condo and HOA. We were doing the joint course, and frankly, I just feel like I don't want to waste people's time having to hear about the type of community they don't live in for an hour and a half out of the 3 hours. So it's also nice that the HOA and condo specific classes are only 2 hours. So we end up going a little over so that I can give more opportunity for the education that you're talking about. But I mean, we offer, and we can go through later, we offer education several times a week for free online. And I do once a month in my office in person in Orlando.
Well, I do have your schedule all the way up to June the 14th, which we'll be sharing with everybody. And remember, if you guys have got the greatest websites, kbrlegal.com. It's K, B as in boy, R legal.com. You have got such great information on there.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, Jeff Rembaum and Robert Kay, they do a fantastic job of getting timely information out in a way that, frankly, isn't as boring as some of the other law firms' blogs and articles that I've read. Jeff's is always just conversational, and Robert's is always an interesting way of putting it. I mean, that guy's been in the industry so long, there's nothing he doesn't think of from what I've seen. So he often will think of ways to describe things that I wouldn't have even considered. So it's fantastic. And all of those courses that you mentioned are also on our calendar on the website. So that always helps people out. If they can't remember when the next class is coming up, you just pull up the calendar on our website. You can register right there.
Alan, we've had so many people who've just written us telling us how great your certification program is.
That's great to hear. That's literally the one thing that I want to hear talking about those classes. I mean, I think that the education is crucial for these directors to understand what their obligations actually are. What are they supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis? How do they manage and maintain their community? Because the people that just sign a certificate instead of taking that class, they don't understand any of the things that we're talking about unless they've got prior experience as a director in an HOA or a condo. And there are not many people that are capable of just stepping into that role and understanding, oh, here's what I should be doing. They may look at it logically, but I hate to tell you, as shocking as this will be for some of our listeners and your listeners, law doesn't always follow logic. And frankly, it frequently doesn't. There's a line that I've used since I started law school, and it's that nothing is safe when the legislature is in session. And the reality is you never know what the statutes are going to be changed to say from year to year. And, you also don't know unless you talk to your attorney or take a class like mine and the ones that our firm offers. You don't know whether your governing documents apply or the statutes apply. So I think it's really crucial that people attend those classes. And, let's be completely blunt here, Steve. That material is boring as hell. But we try to make it really interesting, and I think we do a pretty good job of that.
You have you called I think it's called Ask a Lawyer. It might have been called something different.
Yeah, Ask the Attorney. That's coming up.
Ask the Attorney. So I've been to several of them, and what's so amazing is, I've seen 50, 60, 70 people in there, and they bring one question in, and that one question usually turns into 5 or 6.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
You all are so good about staying longer. I think it was the one I was at was supposed to be for an hour. It ended up being an hour and a half because people had so many questions. And it's so great that you offer, classes like that. It's wonderful because you're a very busy law firm.
We are, but you know what? We think that the education is just that important that we're willing to put the time into it because, frankly, an educated public might understand that they shouldn't be raising claims against our clients that don't have any basis in law. And frankly, the same thing applies to our clients. They might not need to contact us as frequently. I mean, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but we actually try to save our clients money when we can. So a lot of times we'll explain things in classes like the ones that I taught this morning and the one I taught 2 days ago. And that, we've got, I think, 12 or 13 coming up next month. We try and teach as much as we can so that people don't need to come to an attorney every time a situation comes up.
There is so much to learn, though, about being a board member.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like running a major corporation.
Well, that's why the class is 2 hours long. We couldn't fit even half of what we need in an hour. And frankly, even putting it at 2 hours, I often just say, hey, we're going to do the class until the 2 hours and we'll do the Q&A after. So like you said, I stay after the class is supposed to be over just so that people get all of the information they can without having to hear other people's questions, which frankly are almost always useful as well.
There's a lot of laws that are getting ready to change.
There are.
Tell me the feedback you're getting from your clients.
They don't like it. I don't know if that's helpful information or not. So
I totally understand. I see the letters that come in.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple in particular that are coming down the pike that, I don't like the fact that the legislature is basically saying in an HOA, you can't govern something that's not viewable from the street because that goes against the nature of a community association. And that's not what was in the contract that all these people agreed to by buying into the community. So you're basically, I hate to say it, but frankly, the legislature seems to be continuously taking away rights that community associations have had for decades. We've got some of the reserve studies and reserve requirements that are being shifted around a little bit compared to last year's. I won't call it a debacle, but let's be realistic. That's what it's called in my head. There are some changes that have already gone into effect. I mean, the negligence laws that were changed where you have to file a lawsuit in 2 years resulted in tens of thousands of lawsuits being filed in a matter of a week. So, there are a lot of changes being made. I don't like most of them, but you know what? That's part of why our firm is a strong believer in being involved in, CAI and legislative initiatives like Mike Bender and some of our other attorneys are actively involved in, and are also involved in the condominium committee of the Florida Bar to try and kind of get this stuff cleaned up. We multiple attorneys within our firm have been involved in task forces to try and clean up some of these statutes that some of them just don't make sense. And I'll be candid, a lot of the time that happens because the legislators say, oh, this is a good idea, it'll protect people, and don't think about how it will impact them overall. They think about, well, we need to protect against this one issue, but don't think about, for example, and I hate to keep coming back to the reserve studies and the reserves that are required now, but you think about all the money. I think we've talked about this every time I've been on the show, Steve. All the money that people are going to need to pay out all of a sudden, the assessments that are going to increase that no one was expecting. And you've got people on fixed incomes that suddenly need to pay another $1,000 a month. I just spoke with a non-director of a community the other day who said that their assessments increased 300% year over year from last year to this year. And a lot of it has to do with this stuff. A lot of it is the increased cost of insurance, which is a major issue that the legislature is allegedly trying to help with. I don't think that's going to come down the pike for several years with a true fix, although, I acknowledge there have been some efforts. And you've got that and the new reserves that are required. And between those two things, you're looking at enormous increases in the amount of assessments. So I don't think that the legislators are thinking of, they're trying to help people keep them safe, but they're going to end up removing them from their homes that they can no longer afford. But I guess that answers your question. Sorry for the rant, Steve.
No, I'm glad. It's never too much, especially the people who are listening to our show really do care and are probably living in an association. It seems like the 55 plus communities are most worried because they really are on a fixed income.
Right.
And they're really kind of surprised that a lot of the properties are raising their rates when it's so tough right now. But that may
seem unfair, but unfortunately, because of the legislation that's come out, because of the insurance hikes that we've seen over the last year, I mean, it's just, it is a necessary evil. There are some, like there was one down in Miami in an HOA, I think it was called the Hammocks, where it really is problematic. But there are a lot of condos that just don't have a choice. they're seeing that their expenses are going up and what they're obligated to do as a board. One of the things I harp on in those board certification classes we mentioned earlier is that the board doesn't have a choice. It is their fiduciary responsibility. Basically, they're a trustee of the association, and that obligates them to actually put in the budget what they really think it's going to cost to maintain and operate the community over the next year. And if that maintenance includes all of these new reserves, all the increases in insurance, they don't have a choice but to increase the assessments by the amounts that are needed to cover all those new expenses or those increased expenses.
Alan, I hear a lot of people, and I know you've probably heard this so much. Why do I have to pay for tennis? I don't even play tennis. Or, I don't need, there's so many people now that are questioning more than ever. And I know what it is. Again, I mean, some of the properties have their own restaurants. Well, prices have gone up, but so the cost of food has gone up.
Right. Well, I mean, the bottom line is you do have a choice. You don't have to live in a country club. You can live in a normal HOA. You can live in a condo. Frankly, you can live in a place that is only governed by the municipality that has no HOA or condominium association. It's I hate to be blunt, but it's your choice to live where there is a tennis court or where there is a restaurant. I personally, I took responsibility for myself when I lived in a country club in Boynton Beach and realized I just couldn't afford it at the time. Now, this was a decade ago, but I looked at what our expenses were, the fact that we did have, the obligatory membership, at least for social. We had the obligatory payment of $100 a month. Even if you didn't use it in the restaurant, you got charged it by the end of the year.
Right.
And I said, this makes no sense for me based on the expenses that it's, that I am incurring as a member of this community. So I moved out. And I hate to be blunt, but that's what some people are going to have to do. Now, the difference between then and now is where are you going to go? That's the problem that people are having. It's, yes, you can sell, but where are you going to buy? Or are you going to rent for the rest of your life? Or frankly, are you going to put yourself, I hate to use the term, in a home, but are you going to go to some sort of assisted living facility so that you don't have to worry about all of this stuff? I mean, it is a mess. Some people are getting reverse mortgages that they never would have considered before, specifically for the purpose of ensuring that they could actually afford these huge increases. And I hate to see it happen, but you got to make a decision. Do you want to live where you're living, or do you want to find somewhere more affordable?
Well, we just got a note on our chat line. Is there concern amongst insiders? I think you can read it. Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So is there concern amongst insiders that with the governor focusing on presidential campaign, community association law will take an even bigger backseat to most everything else?
Well, I mean, the governor certainly plays a role in what legislation gets passed or doesn't. But my understanding, and when you say insider, I don't know Governor DeSantis personally, so I'm not an insider in that respect. But from someone who's kind of, I'll put it this way, that's seen how the sausage is made, I would say that the governor is required to sign or veto bills within a certain amount of time. I think it's 15 days, or that bill is simply, put aside, or that bill is simply passed. So it's really going to be a matter of what the legislature decides to do, what the individual legislators decide is appropriate and acceptable. There's not really much concern from my perspective that is going to impact the fact that the governor has announced his decision to run for president. I don't think it's going to impact that legislation at all, because even if he doesn't even look at it within those 15 days, I believe it automatically becomes a law. So if the legislator passes it, that presidential run is not going to impact the other legislators. So from my perspective, it shouldn't have an impact. But that said, you never know. It could have more political ramifications that have nothing to do with his actual review of the legislation. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that is something that I have not seen the sausage made, and I am definitely not an insider on.
Didn't have him over for dinner last night, right?
No, I invited him. He ignored me. I'm very disappointed.
He was busy on Twitter. No,
Exactly.
let's go to Sam Tampa on the phone. Good afternoon, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Yes. Thank you for taking my call. I have a question. We have a condominium association. We are in the process of accepting proposals, bids for the cleaning of our building, porter services. Some have presented a contract with sales tax and some have not. And I've questioned a couple of them, and the ones that said they're not with charges is that we're a residential condominium, so we wouldn't charge you sales tax. But the other companies, two other companies said, yes, we would charge you because you're a commercial building. We are a standalone 100-unit, seven-story condominium in Pinellas County. Are there any other listeners in regards to paying a sales tax? I don't know if this is covered under the statute 718. Could you share some information? Thank you.
So it's not something that I'm even remotely aware of anything being listed under 718, and it probably won't be in your declaration of condominium either, unless you are a commercial condominium. I do not anticipate that you would be treated as commercial. Frankly, it may be something to have your manager, your attorney reach out to the taxing authority and find out what their position would be. But the fact that you've identified yourself as a residential condo, purely residential, they may just be intentionally treating all condominiums as commercial for the purpose of, frankly, covering their own behind when they are going back to the taxing authority later and saying, yep, we made sure to collect sales tax for everything we had to. So it may just be something that they have concerns. Their counsel gave them the suggestion that any large building is automatically treated as commercial. I don't know of anything in the law that says that, but frankly, it's not something I've been asked before. So again, my only suggestion would be to reach out to your counsel who can evaluate that a little better. If our firm represents your association, reach out to one of our attorneys. If we don't, I'm happy to speak with you about that. But bottom line, I would just reach out to the taxing authority and find out, is any condo going to be automatically treated as commercial, or any particular size of building with a specific amount of units going to be automatically treated as commercial. Otherwise, they may have the right to charge it. They may not have the right. They may just be covering themselves. But frankly, given the amount of expense that I anticipate you're dealing with, I think it's probably worth taking the time to verify whether, these vendors are entitled to charge sales tax or not. If not, it's just profit for them.
Okay. No, the last two vendors, there was no sales tax at all mentioned or anything. So we've never paid sales tax. But now we are giving notice to the last vendor due to poor service. So now we're getting out, like I said, getting bids, and some are kind of mixed. Our makeup of this 100-unit complex is about 25% year-round, and about 30% people come from up north and spend 4 or 5 months, and then people like me as a second home that I rent it out. So that's the makeup.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that some of the units are rented, in my opinion, does not make it a commercial condo. A commercial condo is where there's actual businesses being operated. Usually you're looking at either some kind of condo hotel, or alternatively, you're looking at a condominium where there are office spaces, not residences, or at least part of it is office spaces, not residences.
I would agree with that. There's no commercial, no restaurant, no business whatsoever. It's just a condominium association.
Yeah, based on everything you've said so far, I would just reiterate my suggestion to reach out to the taxing authority. And if they're able to tell you that there's not going to be sales tax on this, then go back to these people and say, hey, I'm being told that there won't be sales tax. Why are you trying to charge it to me?
Right. And that would be what, the Florida Sales Tax office in Tallahassee?
Most likely, yes.
All right.
Unless you
Thank
have a
you so
local
much.
county sales tax that's also being charged.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I have enjoyed this show. And I will continue listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Sam.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Sam. Let's go. If you've got a call, if you got a question for Alan, and excuse the dog, it's not mine. You can give us a call here, or you can go to our chat line. The phone number here is 561-623-9429. You've got some events coming up. You've got a legislative session update. It's going to be on Zoom on June 8th at 12 noon.
Yes, sir. We've got that one. Is Mike Bender's going to be teaching that one of the senior partners of our firm. That's hosted by Campbell Property Management. We've got an HOA board certification class that I'll be teaching on June 13th. That one's hosted by Empire Management. We've got the legislative session update again. That's a luncheon. That's Wednesday, the 14th of next month at Carmine's in Palm Beach Gardens. That's going to be Jeff Rembaum, another of our senior partners that we've talked about earlier. We've got the Ask the Attorney, Steve, that you mentioned. We've actually got one coming up. Town Hall Q&A. That's June 15th at Tamarack Community Center at 6 p.m. And then we've got a condo board certification, like I mentioned earlier, in my office in Orlando. That'll be coming up at noon to 2:30. Like I said, I try to give an extra half hour for the Q&A on the 27th. And we've got a couple more coming through that will be on the website at kbrlegal.com. But they haven't been formally announced yet. So we'll announce those when the time comes. We may be announcing those next time I talk to you, Steve.
Yes. Hey, Alan, if someone is considering becoming a board member, don't you think the certification class is good for them?
Absolutely. I mean, the good news is that class is good for up to a year before you actually get elected. So even if you take it in advance, you don't have to just take it again unless you're elected more than a year later. So once you get your certificate, I don't know how other firms operate, but we do it where you take the class. If you finish it, you complete your quick survey of frankly, how we did and whether you want us to reach out to you. You complete that survey. And by the way, you're not obligated to say yes, or that I did a good job, or that any of our other attorneys did a good job. You complete the survey and you automatically will get the certificate, and that you just keep it in your email, or you take a picture of it with your phone, or you print it out. That goes in the association's records once you get elected. So I totally agree with you, Steve. I think it's a great idea to take the class in advance. It's, you're not getting charged for it, so you're not out of pocket. We offer all of these educational courses are free. And so I do think it's a good idea to take it in advance, get prepared, and figure out, frankly, what you're in for the most part, if you do end up getting elected. And frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if some people after taking that class decide, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah. What kind of background do you need to have, do you think, to be a board member, Alan?
Frankly, any business background is going to be helpful, but anyone who cares about their community really can do this job. Because here's the reality. Okay, Steve, you've got, for most communities in South Florida, and a lot of them in Central Florida and Tampa and most of the places we practice, a lot of them are managed. So the people that are on the board not only have the managers giving them guidance, but they hopefully have good attorneys giving them guidance as well. And they're really protected to a large extent, both by insurance policies and by the Florida statutes, unless they really had no reason to believe that what they were doing was in the best interest of the community. And so really, when you ask about background, there are some things that are helpful. Accounting background is going to be good for treasurer. Any business background, if you've sat on a board of directors of any organization, because keep in mind, what we're talking about is a not-for-profit corporation. You're running a business. So anyone that's been in business at a semi-higher level is probably going to be able to be helpful in running this community. But again, anyone that's willing to volunteer is probably going to be helpful as long as they have a good attitude and they're not trying to single people out. They're not out to get anyone, and they can frankly follow direction from their manager and their attorney when there really is a clear answer.
Let's go. We've got so many emails. Let's go to Ron in Orlando. Ron wants to know, how often are HOA boards legally meant to meet besides just the annual meeting?
I mean, the reality is I've got some boards that want to meet once a week. I've got some that only meet when an issue comes up that requires a meeting, and some that schedule a monthly meeting. I've got others that don't meet for 6-12 months. There's really no statutory requirement for when a condo or HOA board is required to meet unless the members specifically complete what they're supposed to do to request a special meeting. But you're going to meet whenever you've got your budget coming up. You're going to meet after the election to decide who's going to do what on the board, who's going to serve in what officer positions, that type of thing. But beyond that, there are only maybe 2 or 3 meetings that are required throughout the entire year. And if you don't have any others, because there's no other business that the board needs to vote on, so be it.
Okay.
I'd rather see them meeting more often, because there are always going to be issues that they might be ignoring if they're not meeting often enough, but you're not required to.
Okay, let's go back to our telephone lines. Douglas in Vero Beach. Hi, Douglas.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. Hey, counselor, you're my favorite educator for the certification classes.
Appreciate that, Douglas.
Stop having your family call in, Alan.
Listen, it's only so much I can do.
Here's the deal. My property manager for the condo association on which I serve as a board says she's never heard of a law in Florida that requires that we post our agenda for the upcoming meeting on our website. We have 153 units. I swear I've seen a law that says if you have 150 units, you must have a website, and secondly, you must post your agendas. Please tell me the truth.
I'm going to be candid. I would probably have to look that one up, but I can tell you 100% you have to have a website, 100% you have to have an agenda for the meeting, 100% you have to post that agenda. The question is whether or not it needs to be on the website. I believe it does. I think you're right, but I'm not going to give you bad legal advice and tell you 100% it does when I frankly have to take a quick look at the statute. But it is right there in the statute as to, if I believe the agenda does need to be posted. If nothing else, the notice need to be posted. It may not be the agenda.
Okay, certainly a good practice, obviously, if not required, and it doesn't cost anything. But
keep in mind the goal. 2 things, actually. Keep in mind 2 things. One, the goal for your board should be transparency and everything that you can possibly be transparent in. If you post the agenda, you're giving everyone notice in the easiest possible way for them to receive it, other than maybe email directly. But you're giving them notice in the best possible way. Everyone knows where to go. They can go there every day for all you care. And they're seeing, here's what we're going to be discussing at this meeting. Not just we're holding a meeting, show up if you want. Here's what we'll be discussing. Okay.
Follow up, please. Thank you, Alan. With regard to minutes, I know that it says that you must keep the minutes in a binder, make them available to the public, and we can regulate when and where. But do you recall whether the minutes must be posted on the website as well?
That's a yes.
I thought so. They're just not doing it. So what's the penalty for our association and condo property manager for not doing it?
Well, I mean, there's really no penalty for your property manager other than getting legal guidance that says that they must do this. And if they choose not to do it, treating that as potentially a breach of the management agreement. I don't know, based on your specific community, your specific manager, and your specific agreement, whether that would work for you, because frankly, it really just depends whether or not the management agreement requires them to follow guidance of counsel. It should, but it might not. So that's one of the things that you can do. The other is, if management is not following the board's direction and it's based on a disagreement as to what the law requires, then they should be going to an attorney, not just unilaterally interpreting it, because the manager is not a lawyer. So the bottom line is they should either be getting their own written legal guidance and providing that to you, or preferably, since they shouldn't frankly bear that cost, the association should be getting that guidance from its counsel and should be sharing that guidance and saying, look at this. Here's the statute. You need to do this. And if you don't, then, again, you might be in breach of your contract.
And they need to post it timely. Let's face it. It doesn't work
Correct.
a year later. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's no specific timing requirement for meeting minutes, but it should be reasonable. The other thing, if that's on the website, you also don't have to necessarily keep a physical binder anywhere. You can potentially
that's good to hear.
access to the records on your website, and that is something that is acceptable. So
That's
you may
really
need to
a good
provide
point.
access to a computer if someone doesn't have one or doesn't have a smartphone or a tablet that they can access those records on the website. But that is one way you can get around having to keep that binder in a specific location.
That's outstanding addition there. Thanks so much. I appreciate you guys.
Douglas.
Take care.
All right. Thank you, Douglas.
Good call. Let's go back to the board. Let's go to Jeff. Should minutes of a town hall informational meeting be kept, or is it just for official board meetings?
So a town hall meeting is non-existent. It has zero legal significance. So no, you don't need to keep meeting minutes from that town hall. If you choose to, that's fine. But keep in mind, you might be kind of obligating yourself to do so every time you hold a town hall from there forward. So my suggestion would be no, just hold that town hall meeting. Usually that is done for the purpose of the board getting the members' thoughts rather than holding a board meeting. So once you gather those thoughts, then you can take the next step and say, okay, well, put in the board meeting minutes that come after that town hall. Hey, here's what was discussed during the town hall. We think that, this contract should be signed. And so here's the vote. The meeting minutes shouldn't be super detailed, but board meeting minutes can easily say, based on the previous discussion at the town hall, the directors discussed X and here's how they voted. So town hall meetings are not a statutory thing. They might exist in your bylaws, but they probably don't. It's kind of like a workshop. It doesn't really exist. You're just informally meeting to try and discuss some issues that have been going on in the community. Now, I say they don't exist. I've done them numerous times. I've probably attended 50 of them. But the bottom line is they don't have a procedural place within the association's records. If you're going to have it, there's nothing that says you can't have minutes, but there's also nothing that says you must.
Okay. Let's go to Michelle in Orlando. She wants to know, do you offer online certification?
We absolutely do. And as a matter of fact, I've got one coming up for HOAs next month. I will most likely, I didn't mention it earlier, but our PR guru and I are in talks to try and actually either record my monthly classes and possibly classes that others within the firm are teaching, or potentially, because my office also has a Zoom room, so to speak, in my conference room, offering that online when I teach it every month. And then, frankly, I probably will never teach a regular HOA or condo board cert ever again, because when I'm teaching the class every month, I'll offer that to everyone rather than just the people that are sitting in the room. So the short answer is yes. That was the slightly longer answer, but we've got an HOA coming up this coming month and possibly condo as well. And I don't think we have anyone else that's teaching a condo course this month, but it would surprise me, frankly, if we didn't, because we really try to offer that education at least once a month.
Thomas in Winter Park wants to know, a homeowner completed a project without ACB approval. The homeowner was away and did not become aware of this for almost 2 years. Does HOA have any recourse, or is there a timeline they must address it?
So that's an interesting question. So the ACB, just for anyone that doesn't understand what that means, is an architectural control board. It's your ARB, your ARC, whatever it might be called anywhere in any community. But it's interesting that they're saying that the owner wasn't home for 2 years. It sounds like they're saying the owner didn't know that the changes were made on their own property.
Yeah.
I'm going to presume that we're talking about the association wasn't aware of it somehow. There is no specific time frame where all of a sudden it's unenforceable, except maybe 5 years, which is the statute of limitations on breach of contract claims. I think that there's a potential issue with the amount of time that's passed. There could be arguments that the association allowed this to go on for so long that they can't enforce it. But that's frankly something for the owner to raise if you end up reaching a lawsuit. It'd be the type of thing where if it's actually the owner that didn't know the changes were made, I would hope that the owner would be willing to bring the property into compliance. If it was the association that didn't know, hopefully the owner is willing to reach a mutually agreeable resolution. Sometimes when I see some of these older outstanding issues, and usually that's where it's been 10 or 5-10 years, 2 is not quite as bad. But if it's a little longer, usually what I'll try to do is allow it to remain. But the second that thing gets dilapidated, whatever the addition or alteration may be, a lot of times it's a fence that wasn't approved, or if it's changes to the driveway, landscaping, etc., flags that were put up without approval. Once that goes into a poor condition, rather than repair or replace it, the owner would actually agree that they're just going to remove it so that there's no longer a violation, etc. But that's not an easy thing to do. Frankly, it's not an easy situation. And it's something that I can't give generic guidance beyond what I've already said today. I would strongly suggest that association speak with their attorney as soon as possible, because the longer you delay this, the more of a defense that the owner might have to be able to leave this implementation, whatever it was, on their property that you might not want there. And frankly, leaving it there could create the implication that others can do the same thing, that you don't want them doing it either.
Everybody just be patient. We got a lot of calls today. We have a lot of emails. We're trying to get to everybody. Let's go to Linda on the line. Hi, Linda.
Hi. This is Linda from Delray Beach.
Okay.
We're 300. Hi. We're a 300-unit condominium association in Delray Beach. And we're just starting to have a few marijuana issues.
Okay.
One is definitely medical. They've got a medical card, but their neighbor is, upset and smelling it, etc. Another one is definitely not medical, and again, a neighbor is upset. And the other one we have to confirm, but we believe it's also recreational.
Well,
and they're complaining in all three.
There are several things you can do, even when it's medical and there is a formal card involved. There are things that you might be able to do. Just because someone has a medical marijuana card doesn't mean they get to smoke. So it's the same thing as cigarettes. I mean, there are many different options for medical marijuana. There are gummies. I know people that have cookies and brownies, and there's all kinds of things that you can get. And I'm not talking about, someone sitting in their kitchen and baking. You're buying these from dispensaries. And so there are alternatives available. And so if that person can't demonstrate, the one that does have the card can't demonstrate that the alternatives that wouldn't impact their neighbors are less effective, then they may not be able to keep smoking. Now, especially the ones that are not sitting there with a card, that's easier to enforce because you don't have the additional Fair Housing, Americans with Disabilities Act style issues. What the association's attorney should be looking at is the nuisance provision of their governing documents, unless there is an actual no smoking regulation. If there is, then that's the one you'll enforce. If there's not, you'll look at your nuisance provision, whether that's in your declaration, possibly rules and regulations or something like that, and see if it involves odors, see if it involves physical intrusion by literally any means, including smoke, and see if it just includes a general prohibition on having other members of the community impacted by your actions. Because a lot of times those nuisance provisions, even though they're, I'll use the term amorphous, which means that they're kind of vague, and they could be interpreted multiple ways, and frankly, they're not clear most of the time. But a lot of the time they will say, if it becomes a source of annoyance, or, it basically causes a neighbor to not be able to use their property to the best of their ability and the way that they should be able to, that is considered a nuisance. And that's a violation of the association's covenants. And so that's the type of violation that you'd be pursuing in the normal fashion, just like any other covenant violation. You send your letters through management if you have a manager. If you don't, you send them through the board. And then you just proceed and try and, get them into compliance. You may end up having to file for arbitration, or preferably send an offer for pre-suit mediation and then file a lawsuit seeking an injunction. So that's really the best advice I can give, is just because someone has a medical marijuana card doesn't mean they're allowed to use medical marijuana in a specific manner, unless their doctor or other, whoever prescribed the card has actually said you need to smoke.
Okay. So even if they're in their own home?
If they're in their own home, but it is filtering through to other units in the condominium, then that is something you might be able to enforce. Now, I'm not going to say that's an easy slam dunk case, but it is something that you might be able to enforce if you can say, listen, this is impacting other members of the community. There are alternatives available. Please start using them. Please contact us if you feel that is not an option for you. At least the person with the medical marijuana card. The other two, you have no obligation to give any semblance of, it's kind of like a no quarter situation. Hey, you're not allowed to do this. You're doing it. Stop it.
Right. Okay. That's great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Linda. You have a great afternoon.
All right.
Hey,
you
that's
too.
a great idea about there's alternatives.
That's especially when you're talking about fair housing. People have disabilities or they've got problems. Actually, the class that I taught just this morning was about emotional support and service animals, and it's the same concept. You give them the opportunity to use something that still serves the same purpose but doesn't impact other members of your community. So thanks, Steve.
That was good. This show went by so fast today.
We didn't even take a break.
I know. It's we had a lot of phone calls. I apologize for all the people who've called and people who left us messages, and we'll just get back to them next month when you're on again.
Sounds like a plan.
Let's give everybody your phone number and the website again.
Sure. The website is www.kbenderrembomlegal.com. And you can reach any of our offices by calling the main office in Pompano Beach, 954-928-0680.
The name of the firm is K. Bender Rembom. They are Association law firm. They're in South Florida. They're in Tampa, and they're Orlando. And we thank Alan Swartseed. You did a great job again, buddy. Always. And I guess we'll be seeing you again soon.
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple days, and we'll see you again next month.
That's right. Thank you so much. And we'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.